Hello and welcome to DTechTV. I'm Dwayne, and today I'm going to talk about how I import videos into Final Cut Pro on my Mac and how I do it a little bit differently. And it might be helpful for you because it solved a few problems that I was having in managing files in Final Cut. And what I'll do is I'm just going to bring over Final Cut for a second just so I can kind of show you guys what I'm talking about here. So if you open up Final Cut, it manages everything in libraries. And when I first started doing it, I did everything in one gigantic library. I made a library for YouTube videos and I just put everything in there and just created projects within the library for the different video files. If I still had an example the way I used to do it, I would have pulled it up. But and initially it seemed like an okay idea because, hey, everything's right there. I just open the DTechTV or my other YouTube channel's videos and boom, there they all are. And I can jump into it and I can move around and I can do all these whiz-bang things. So what I did is I decided to change it up a little bit. Let me just move this out of the way. And okay, the fundamental problem with doing it that way is the files are, like I said, large and difficult to move around. And if you get to the point where your computer, and this is what happened to me, when you get to the point where your computer's full and you're like, oh crap, I got to offload some stuff, then you have this gigantic singular file that you have to move. And you can't just slowly pick 100 gigabytes worth of stuff or 200 gigabytes worth of stuff to move off to be able to use your computer again. You have this gigantic file and it's really cumbersome to deal with. The other thing that was complicated with that, at least for me, is that then your exports aren't really tied to the whole project because your project's in Final Cut. So you have this, when you export your things and you're managing all your exports in one area, you have all your media and all your raw files in someplace else, and they're not interconnected. And it wasn't a really easy way for me to store everything together and have it like as a separate project. So like for this video, if I wanted to have one little area, then it's there and I could just move the whole thing, archive it, and if I ever want to go back to it, everything's there, the export files, the thumbnails, everything. Okay, so my solution was to break that out and store it all in a separate folder. And what I'm going to show you here is I'll just bring over this little quick shortcut over here. And I have basically a template. I'm going to go ahead and just delete this test project. I got a template folder that I have created that I always start out with. So in that folder, I have it broken out into different sections. I like to use numbers in the beginning because that way when you sort by name, it's, the top file is your media, the second part is your application programs, threes are your thumbnails, your export thumbnails that you're going to mess with, and then 4 is your finals. So if you're doing something for YouTube or email or podcast or whatever, that's where your export files go. And then you put your finished thumbnails and everything in there. You can even put your text and everything, not your text, but your descriptions and stuff in there. I don't actually do that, but that would be, you could put everything in there. So that one folder has everything for that file that you can always go back and get. So what I do when I'm ready to pull something in, I just go into my video file area and I just duplicate. I hit Command D to duplicate that directory. And then I hit Enter on a Mac. That lets you rechange the name. And then I normally name everything with the date. So like today's date is the 4th of July. So happy 4th of July. And say test media file, right? And then what I do on that, so you click into it and you can see I have my camera file and my audio file. All I do is I just go into the video file for the images and I drop it into the right thing. This was shot on a Panasonic G85, so I just drop it into there. And while that's copying, I come over and grab the audio, which was on my Zoom F1, and same thing, just grab that audio file and drop it into the Zoom F1 file. Wait for that to all copy. That's what happens whenever you're using a slow card reader. It takes a little bit more time. So once those are imported, then what I do is I go back, and I should have done this before, but just copy the file name, just hit enter on it again while it's selected, hit Command copy, hit enter again to unselect it. And I go over to Final Cut, which is already open. So let me close this and I can show you exactly how I do this. So if I'm doing a new project, if you hit Option and open Final Cut, it asks you to pick the library you want to use. And what I do then is I just pick New, go to the video area where I had that, go into the Final Cut Pro X folder, paste in the project name, get rid of the date because I don't really need it anymore. I could retype it in, but pasting has its benefits. And hit enter, and then Final Cut opens like this. And then all you got to do is just create a new project so it has a place to do it. And again, I just call it a test media project. I like to keep the names out. I use the custom settings, not that it matters, but if you wanted to force it to be in a certain format like 720p or 1080 or whatever, and then I just import the files. So when I come into import, I just go back to the area. I'll come back over to videos here, into that directory, and whoops, wrong thing. And then typically what I do is I just expand the media files, click them individually by hitting Command and then click to click them all. I tell it to leave them in place, although what you'll notice is if I only click on the video clip, which is an AVC HD file, it's actually going to copy it over. There's a workaround for this where you can actually export the AVC files into actual movie files. I'll cover that in a different video, but for this, for simplicity, I import those in. And now there you go, right? Then I typically just shrink that down and you can scrub through everything and do your normal stuff. So that is, I'll go ahead and shrink that down. That is how I pull my video files into Final Cut and manage it. And what I wanted to show on this, then what happens is, I'll just pull this up. I'll close this directory here, is I have these are some other ones I was working on, some interviews I was doing for a different channel. Actually, they're videos and podcasts, and it's the same thing. So I have in it, I have, like for instance, on this interview I did with Leslie Powers, I have the audio hijack audios that I captured. I have the frame elements that I use in Final Cut. I have the video files from my G7, my G85, sorry. And I didn't have anything from the Zoom. I did have stuff from Zoom US. So again, that's like a media file. So I captured the interview through Zoom, used that, and then have the different areas where I have the Logic file, the Logic Pro X file, the Final Cut Pro file, the thumbnails. Well, I didn't create a thumbnail yet on it, and I didn't do that. I've only done a draft video, but that's it, right? So now if I want to move this around, if I want to take this entire file, I can easily copy it. Everything is there. It's all encapsulated. And if I need to move it, I can archive it. I can back it up. I could potentially even send it to someone, but it's going to be a large file because of all the data and everything. But that's it. And that saved my bacon a few times. I had a situation the other day where I actually filled up my MacBook Pro with media, and the hard drive filled up, and it was a lot easier just to grab a chunk of these files, move them off to get it working, instead of having to wait for 600 gigabytes of Final Cut Pro library files to copy. So I hope that helps you out. It's a different way to think about things, and might make life a little easier for you. I went through, and after I finally decided that the library thing wasn't working for me, I pulled everything out into separate files and put it like this. So there you go. That's how I manage all my video projects, and now actually my podcast projects for dealing with it and for storing it. And it's been working for me. Hopefully it'll be helpful for you. I also like it because if I just needed to grab a video file, I can just go to the directory, grab it, and pull it out. I can easily get to the media without having to go in. One thing I will show you, just as a little bonus before I go, what you can do if you go into, like let's say we'll go back into this one, and we go into the Final Cut Pro. If you right click on it, you can do a show package things, and you can get to the media by going into the project and going into original media, and you can pull it out there. It's harder to do, and it's not great. And these are actually links. This isn't even actually the real original files. So it's hard if you have to go into it. That's why I like doing it the other way. It just makes, I know why, because it's reference. That's why these aren't doing it, is because they're stored in place. But if you had it in it and you had it stored in it, then the files would be there. So on that, So thanks for hanging out with me. Hopefully this was helpful. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like this type of content and maybe you can learn from some of my mistakes and frustrations that I've been doing on my other channel to get it to where it is today, subscribe. So whenever I add more little tips and tricks on how I figure things out, you'll know about it. And I'll chat with you on the next video. Take care.